Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories today. I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story, asterisk. Julian Ashford adjusted his tie for the third time as he waited in the private dining room of the Meridian, one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants. At 32, he had built Ashford Technologies from a college dorm room idea into an $80 million empire. He had addressed conferences, negotiated with Fortune 500 companies, and revolutionized cybersecurity protocols used by governments worldwide. But sitting here waiting for a woman he had never met, he felt like a nervous teenager. His business partner, Grant Morrison, had insisted on arranging this date. "Veronica Hayes is perfect for you," Grant had said repeatedly. Harvard Law, partner at her firm by 30. Brilliant mind. She is exactly the kind of woman you need. What Grant meant, Julian knew, was that Veronica was the kind of woman who might overlook the wheelchair. The thought made Julian's jaw tighten. He'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 7 years now, since a diving accident during a vacation in Costa Rica had changed everything. He had learned to navigate his new reality, to build a life that was full and meaningful, despite the limitations. But dating remained complicated in ways that had nothing to do with accessibility. The door opened, and Julian straightened instinctively. Veronica Hayes walked in, and he could see immediately why Grant had been so enthusiastic. She was striking, with sharp features, perfectly styled auburn hair, and a charcoal designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her confidence filled the room as she scanned the space with calculating eyes. Then those eyes landed on his wheelchair, and Julian saw the exact moment everything changed. Her professional smile froze. Her steps faltered. The warmth drained from her expression, replaced by something between shock and poorly concealed disgust. "Julian," she asked, her voice climbing half an octave. "That is me," Julian replied, extending his hand with practiced ease. "Veronica, I presume? It is a pleasure to meet you." She stared at his hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before giving it the briefest possible shake, as if afraid prolonged contact might somehow transfer his condition to her. She sat down across from him, but Julian noticed how she positioned her chair slightly farther from the table than necessary. "Maintaining maximum distance? Grant didn't mention that. You... Veronica began, gesturing vaguely toward his wheelchair. "Use a wheelchair?" Julian finished for her, keeping his tone neutral. No, he probably thought it would not matter. Apparently, he was optimistic. "It is just surprising," Veronica said quickly, too quickly. "That is all." The waiter arrived to take their orders, providing a brief respite from the tension. Julian ordered the restaurant's signature salmon. Veronica requested a salad, her voice clipped and distracted. As soon as the waiter left, the awkward silence returned. Heavier than before, Julian tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her work at the law firm. Her recent cases, her interests outside the office. Veronica answered in monosyllables, checking her phone constantly, her body language screaming her desire to be anywhere else. Every question Julian asked was met with minimal response. Every attempt at humor fell flat. 20 excruciating minutes passed. Then Veronica set down her water glass with more force than necessary and leaned forward. "Look," she said, her voice low, but not quite low enough. "I appreciate that Grant thought this was a good idea, but let us be honest here. I have a certain image to maintain. I attend galas, charity functions, corporate events. I need a partner who can stand beside me at those events. Someone who fits the lifestyle." Julian felt the familiar burn of humiliation in his chest, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. "I see, and someone in a wheelchair does not fit that image." "It is not personal," Veronica continued, as if that made it better. "It is just practical. I mean, think about it. The logistics alone would be complicated, and people would stare. They would ask questions. I did not work this hard to build my reputation just to become known as the woman who dates the guy in the wheelchair. It would be a distraction from my career." Nearby tables had begun to notice the rising tension. Julian could feel eyes turning toward them, curiosity and pity in equal measure. He wanted to disappear, to wheel himself out of this restaurant and never look back. But pride kept him seated, kept his spine straight despite the crushing weight of her words.
Wait, so what you were saying?
Julian said quietly, is that my disability makes me unworthy of being seen with you in public. I am saying I have standards, Veronica replied, standing abruptly and gathering her designer purse, and I am sorry, but you do not meet them. I am sure there is someone out there who would be willing to take on a project like you, but I am not interested in being anyone's nurse or charity case. She said the last words loudly enough that several nearby diners openly turned to stare. Julian felt his face burning, humiliation washing over him in waves. He had experienced discrimination before, had dealt with thoughtless comments and architectural barriers and patronizing attitudes. But this public rejection, this casual cruelty delivered in a room full of witnesses, cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Veronica walked out without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Julian sat frozen at the table, acutely aware of every eye on him, every whispered comment. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly unsure what to do. Sir, I am so sorry. Would you like me to cancel the orders? No, Julian said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Just bring me the wine list. The expensive one. The waiter hurried away. Julian closed his eyes and tried to steady his breathing. This was why he avoided dating. This was why he threw himself into work, surrounded himself with the familiar safety of code and algorithms and business, deals that did not care about his physical limitations. Every time he tried to let someone in, every time he hoped things might be different, reality came crashing back with painful clarity. Excuse me, a soft voice said beside him. Julian opened his eyes to find a young woman standing next to his table. She wore the black and white uniform of the Meridian's waitstaff, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. But what struck him most were her eyes, deep brown and currently blazing with barely contained fury. Yes, Julian managed. I am Alina, she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. And I need you to know that woman who just left is the most horrible person I have ever seen walk through these doors. I have worked here for 3 years. So that is saying something. Julian blinked, surprised out of his misery. Thank you, but you do not have to. ... Yes, I do, Alina interrupted, glancing around quickly before pulling out the chair Veronica had vacated and sitting down. Because what just happened was wrong. Completely, absolutely wrong. And you deserve to know that not everyone in this world is blind, stupid, or soulless. I appreciate the sentiment, Julian said. But your manager is going to notice you sitting with a customer. Let him notice, Alina said with a fierce determination that made Julian's lips twitch despite everything. Some things are more important than following arbitrary rules. And right now, making sure you do not leave here thinking you deserve that treatment is more important than my job. You could really get fired for this, Julian warned. Then I will get fired for doing the right thing, Alina replied. Now, you ordered the salmon, correct? When it arrives, I am going to share this table with you and have a proper conversation, because that woman did not deserve even 1 minute of your time. And you deserve to finish your evening with someone who has the basic decency to see you as a human being. For the first time since Veronica had walked in, Julian felt something other than humiliation. He felt seen. Not pitied, not patronized, but genuinely seen by someone who had just put her livelihood on the line to defend a complete stranger. Why are you doing this? He asked softly. Elena's fierce expression softened into something gentler. Because my little sister Sophie has cerebral palsy. I have spent my entire life watching people treat her like she is less than human because of her physical challenges. And I will never, ever stand by and watch someone be dehumanized like that. Not on my watch. Not ever. Julian felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. Your sister is lucky to have you. I am lucky to have her, Alina corrected. She taught me what really matters in this world. And it is not designer clothes or corporate ladders or maintaining some perfect image. It is kindness, empathy, and having the courage to stand up for what is right. The manager of the Meridian approached their table, his expression stern. Miss Carter, what are you doing? Alina looked up at him without flinching. I am finishing a conversation, Mr. Peterson. I will be back to work in a moment. This is highly inappropriate, Mr. Peterson said. So is what happened here tonight, Alina replied firmly. and I chose to address that inappropriateness rather than ignore it. If that costs me my job, then so be it. Mr. Peterson looked between Alina and Julian, clearly torn between enforcing restaurant policy and avoiding a scene. Finally, he sighed. The gentleman has not complained. I will give you 10 minutes, Miss Carter. Then I expect you back at your station. As Mr. Peterson walked away, Alina turned back to Julian with a small smile. So, Julian, tell me about yourself. And I do not want to hear about your company or your business achievements. Tell me about you. What do you do when you are not building empires? What makes you laugh? What is your favorite, completely ridiculous, guilty pleasure? And despite everything, despite the humiliation still burning in his chest and the stares still coming from nearby tables, Julian found himself smiling. Because this strange, fierce young woman had just given him something he had not experienced in a very long time. She had given him hope. The 10 minutes Mr. Peterson had granted turned into 20, then 30. Julian found himself talking to Alina Carter in a way he had not talked to anyone in years. She asked him about his love for vintage jazz music, about the mystery novels he secretly devoured at 2 in the morning, about his failed attempts at learning to play the saxophone. In return, she told him about her dreams of opening her own bistro, about her sister Sophie's infectious laugh, about how she had once accidentally set a kitchen on fire trying to make creme brulee when Alina finally had to return to work. Julian found himself reluctant to let the conversation end. He paid his bill and added a generous tip, but before leaving, he wrote his phone number on the back of his business card. If you would like to continue this conversation sometime, he said, handing it to her, I would really enjoy that. Maybe over coffee? Or dinner at a place where you do not have to work. Alina took the card, her smile genuine and warm. I would love that. How about Sunday? It is my day off. Sunday is perfect, Julian said, feeling lighter than he had in months. Over the following 3 weeks, Julian and Alina saw each other whenever their schedules allowed. Alina worked long hours at the Meridian, often pulling double shifts to help cover her sister's medical expenses and save toward her dream of culinary school. Julian's schedule was equally demanding, with Ashford Technologies in the middle of expanding into the European market. But they made time, stealing hours here and there. Building something neither had expected to find, Julian learned that Alina was 28, that she had been essentially raising Sophie since their mother died 5 years ago from cancer. Their father had left when Alina was 12, unable to handle the demands of caring for a child with cerebral palsy. Alina had worked multiple jobs since she was 16, putting herself through community college while caring for Sophie, who was now 23 and living in a supported living facility that Alina visited every day. She is the strongest person I know, Alina told him during a walk through Millennium Park. Julian navigating the paths easily in his chair while Alina walked beside him. People look at her and see limitations, but Sophie sees possibilities everywhere. She taught me that disabilities do not define people. Lack of compassion does. Julian, in turn, opened up about his own struggles in ways he rarely did with anyone. He told her about the depression that had consumed him after the accident, about the physical therapy that had been agonizing, about the moment he realized he could either let the wheelchair define him or he could define himself despite it. My family struggled with it, he admitted. They loved me, but they started treating me like I was fragile, like I might break. My mother especially. She became overprotective to the point of suffocation. My brother Preston took over parts of the company he thought I could not handle anymore, even though my mind works perfectly fine. It took me years to reclaim my authority, to make them see I was still capable. Are they better now? Alina asked. Julian's expression darkened. They are better at hiding their doubt, but it is still there. They still think I need managing. Still think my personal life requires their intervention. He did not tell her that his family would likely disapprove of their relationship, though he suspected Alina knew. The differences in their backgrounds were obvious, impossible to ignore. Julian lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Alina shared a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working class neighborhood with a rotating cast of roommates to help split the rent. His world was corporate deals and investment portfolios. Hers was double shifts and carefully budgeted groceries. But when they were together, none of that seemed to matter. Their first official date was at Julian's penthouse. He had insisted on cooking for her, wanting to show her that he was capable and independent in his own space. Alina arrived wearing a simple navy dress, her usual ponytail replaced by loose waves, and Julian felt his breath catch. "Welcome to my home," he said, gesturing around the open-plan space. Everything was designed for accessibility, but also for beauty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of the city. Art pieces he had collected over the years adorned the walls. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes on everything from computer science to philosophy. "Julian, this is beautiful," Alina said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "The kitchen is this way," he said, leading her through. "I hope you are hungry. I am making risotto, and I will be offended if you do not eat at least 2 servings." Alina laughed, the sound filling his home with warmth. "I would never insult a chef's risotto. That is a sacred rule." They cooked together, Julian handling the risotto while Alina prepared a salad and garlic bread. They moved around each other with surprising ease, falling into a natural rhythm. Julian told her about learning to cook after the accident, how it had become a form of therapy, a way to prove to himself that he could still create, still nurture, still provide. "My mother wanted to hire a full-time chef for me," he said, stirring the rice slowly. "She could not understand why I insisted on cooking for myself, but it mattered. It still matters. This is my space, my domain, where I am completely in control." "I understand that," Alina said softly. "Food has always been my way of showing love. When Sophie was having a hard day, I would make her favorite cookies. When my mother was sick, I would cook elaborate meals just to see her smile. Cooking is not just sustenance. It is connection." Dinner was perfect. They ate at Julian's table overlooking the twinkling lights of Chicago, talking about everything and nothing. Julian felt something he had not felt in years. Completely comfortable, completely accepted, completely seen. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Julian poured wine, and they continued talking as the city lights sparkled below them. At some point, Elena's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I need to tell you something," Julian said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I am falling for you, Alina, fast and hard, and in a way that terrifies me, because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated, or I am too much work, or that being with me comes with challenges you did not sign up for." Alina shifted closer, her brown eyes intense. "Julian Ashford, listen to me very carefully. You are not too much work. You are not a burden. You are brilliant and kind and funny and talented. Yes, you use a wheelchair. So what? That is just one aspect of who you are. It does not define you, and it certainly does not make me want you any less. And my family is going to be difficult," Julian warned. "They have opinions about everything, including who I should date. And when they find out about us, then we will handle it," Alina said firmly. "Together. I am not afraid of difficult families or complicated situations, Julian. I am only afraid of walking away from something real, because it might be hard. And this feels real to me. Does it feel real to you?" "More real than anything I have ever experienced," Julian admitted. Alina leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "So we are doing this?" Alina asked. "Officially? We are definitely doing this," Julian confirmed. "You and me against whatever comes next." What came next arrived sooner than either of them expected. 2 days later, Julian received a call from Grant Morrison. "We need to talk," Grant said, his tone serious. "In person? Can you come to the office?" At Ashford Technologies headquarters, Grant was waiting in the conference room with Thomas Brennan, their lead investor and board member. "Julian, sit down," Thomas said, gesturing to a chair. "We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Julian asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. Grant cleared his throat uncomfortably. "There are photos circulating. You and Alina Carter at that restaurant at various places around Chicago, at your penthouse. Someone has been following you." "Following me?" Julian's voice hardened. Why? Because Westbrook International wants to invest $100 million into Ashford Technologies, Thomas explained. They are our ticket to massive expansion. But their CEO, Harold Westbrook, is old-fashioned about certain things. He believes company leaders should present a certain image, and he has expressed concerns about your relationship with a waitress. Julian felt fury building in his chest. My personal life is not his concern. It becomes his concern when it affects his investment, Grant said carefully. Harold Westbrook comes from old money, old values. He is worried about optics, about how it looks for a CEO to be dating someone so far outside his social circle. He thinks it shows poor judgment. Poor judgment, Julian repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Dating a hard-working, compassionate woman who supports her disabled sister shows poor judgment? I am just telling you what he said, Grant replied. He is willing to make the investment if you end the relationship. Otherwise, the deal is off. Thomas leaned forward. Julian, this is $100 million. That is the kind of capital that could transform this company, that could secure everyone's future here. We are talking about hundreds of jobs, expansion into 6 new countries, partnerships that could make Ashford Technologies a global household name. And all I have to do is break up with Elena, Julian said flatly. It is a business decision, Thomas said. Not a personal one. Julian looked between the two men, these people he had worked with for years, and saw the expectation in their eyes. They genuinely believed he would choose the money. They thought this was an easy calculation. No, Julian said simply. Grant blinked. No, Julian repeated, more firmly. I will not end my relationship with Elena for Harold Westbrook or his money or anyone else. If Westbrook cannot see past his outdated prejudices, then he is not someone I want as a partner anyway. Julian, be reasonable, Thomas started. I am being reasonable, Julian interrupted. I am being reasonable about what actually matters in life. Elena showed me kindness when I was at my lowest. She sees me as a complete person, not as a disability or a bank account. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better. And you are asking me to throw that away for money? No, absolutely not. This is $100 million, Grant said, as if Julian had not understood the amount. I heard you the first time, Julian replied, and my answer is still no. Tell Westbrook his investment is not welcome. I will find other investors, people who care more about innovation than social climbing, people who understand that a CEO's worth is not measured by who he dates. Thomas stood abruptly. You are making a mistake. Then it is my mistake to make, Julian said. This is my company, built on my ideas, my work, my vision. And I am not going to compromise my values or my happiness for anyone's investment. If that costs me business partners, so be it. After they left, Julian sat alone in the conference room, his hands shaking slightly. He had just walked away from a fortune, potentially damaged his company's growth trajectory, all for a relationship that was barely a month old. Some would call that foolish. But as he pulled out his phone and called Elena, hearing her voice wash over him like a bomb, Julian knew he had made the right choice. Because money could be earned and lost and earned again. But finding someone who saw your worth, who valued you for who you truly were, that was priceless. Elena, he said when she answered, are you free tonight? I need to see you. I have something important to tell you. Is everything okay? She asked, concern in her voice. Everything is perfect, Julian said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I just realized what really matters, and I want to share that with you. That evening, Julian told Elena everything. About the investment offer, about Westbrook's conditions, about his decision to walk away. He expected her to be upset, maybe even angry that he had risked so much for their relationship. Instead, Elena burst into tears. You chose me, she whispered, her voice breaking. You chose us over $100 million. I would choose you over any amount of money, Julian said, pulling her close. Because you are worth more than any investment, any business deal, any expansion plan. You are real, Elena. What we have is real. and I am not going to let anyone take that away from us. Alina kissed him then, deep and passionate, pouring everything she felt into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "I love you," Alina said. "I know it is fast. I know it is crazy. But I love you, Julian Ashford." "I love you too," Julian replied, the words coming easily, naturally. More than I thought possible, they held each other as the city lights glowed around them, as people from different worlds who had found something precious together. They both knew challenges lay ahead. Julian's family still did not know about their relationship. Elena's demanding work schedule and family responsibilities would continue to complicate things. The business world would keep judging, keep questioning, keep waiting for them to fail. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had each other, and they had love. And that was enough to face whatever came next. The fallout from Julian's decision came swiftly. Within days, his mother Catherine requested an urgent family meeting at the Ashford estate. Julian knew what was coming, but he went anyway, with Alina by his side. He had asked her to come, wanting his family to meet the woman he loved, hoping they might see what he saw in her. The Ashford estate was intimidating. A sprawling mansion in the suburbs with manicured gardens and architecture that screamed old money. Elena's hand tightened on Julian's as they approached the front door. "You do not have to do this," Julian murmured. "I can handle them alone." "We are in this together," Elena reminded him. "Remember?" Inside, the entire Ashford family was assembled. Catherine sat in her usual high-back chair like a queen holding court. Julian's father, Richard Ashford, stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. His brother Preston lounged on the sofa looking smug. "Julian," Catherine said coldly, her eyes sliding over Alina with barely concealed disdain. "You brought a guest." "This is Elena Carter," Julian said firmly. "The woman I love. Alina, these are my parents, Catherine and Richard, and my brother Preston." "It is nice to meet you," Elena said politely. Though Julian could hear the slight tremor in her voice, Catherine did not offer her hand. "Miss Carter, I understand you work at the Meridian." "I do," Elena confirmed, lifting her chin. "I am a server there while I save money for culinary school." "How industrious," Catherine said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. "Julian, might I speak with you privately?" "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Alina," Julian replied. Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. "Very well. We heard about the Westbrook deal. You turned down $100 million for this relationship." "I did," Julian confirmed. "Have you lost your mind?" Preston interjected. "Do you know what that investment could have done for the company? For all of us." "I know exactly what it would have done," Julian said calmly. "It would have made us richer. It also would have required me to end my relationship with the woman I love. I was not willing to do that, because she has gotten her hooks into you," Preston sneered. "Come on, Julian. A waitress and a millionaire? It is obvious what she wants." Alina stiffened beside Julian, but before she could respond, Julian's voice cut through the room like ice. "Finish that thought, Preston. And you and I are done. Permanently." The threat in Julian's voice was unmistakable. Preston actually flinched. "We are just concerned," Catherine said, though her tone remained cold. "You have been through so much since the accident. You are vulnerable, Julian. And people take advantage of vulnerable, wealthy men all the time." "I am not vulnerable," Julian said firmly. "I am capable of making my own decisions. And I chose Alina because she is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and treats me like a complete person, not like a disability in a wheelchair." "If she truly cared about you," Catherine said, turning to Alina directly, "she would understand that your future is more important than her feelings. A woman who loved you would want what is best for you, which includes financial security and appropriate social connections." Elena had been silent up to this point, but now she spoke, her voice steady, despite the obvious hostility in the room. "Mrs. Ashford, with all due respect, you do not get to define what love means. I did not ask Julian to turn down that investment. When he told me about it, I told him I would understand if he needed to prioritize his business. He made that choice himself because he believes some things are more important than money. And if you cannot see that, If you truly think your son's worth is measured only by his bank account and social status, then you do not know him at all." The room fell silent. Catherine's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to me that way in my own home?" Catherine hissed. "I am speaking the truth," Alina continued, her voice gaining strength. "Your son is brilliant, compassionate, and brave. He has built an incredible company while dealing with challenges most people could not imagine. He deserves to be loved for who he is, not for what he can provide or what image he projects. And if you spent less time trying to control his life and more time actually seeing him, you might realize how extraordinary he truly is." Richard Ashford, who had been silent until now, spoke for the first time. "Julian, is this truly what you want? This relationship, regardless of the consequences?" Julian took Elena's hand and faced his father squarely. "Yes, Alina is what I want. A future with her is what I want. And if that means losing business deals or disappointing this family, then so be it. Because for the first time in 7 years, I feel complete. I feel seen and valued for who I am, not pitied or managed or treated like I am broken. Alina did that. She gave me that gift, and I am not walking away from it for anything." "Then you will marry her," Richard said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Even Catherine looked shocked. "What?" Preston sputtered. "If Julian loves this woman enough to sacrifice business opportunities, enough to defy this family, then he should marry her," Richard continued. "Make it official. Show us all this is real and not just rebellion against our expectations." Julian looked at Elena, whose eyes had gone wide. This was not how he had planned to propose, not even close. But as he looked at her, saw the love and support shining in her eyes, despite the hostility surrounding them. He knew his father was right. He maneuvered his wheelchair to face Elena directly. Taking both her hands in his, "Elena Carter," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "this is not the romantic proposal you deserve. There are no candles or rose petals or carefully planned speeches, but the truth is simple. I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce loyalty to the people you care about. I love how you see the best in people, how you fight for what is right, how you make me want to be better. You changed my life the moment you sat down at my table and refused to let me believe I deserved that humiliation. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Elena's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Julian. 1,000 times yes." They kissed. Right there in the Ashford family living room, ignoring the shocked silence around them. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. Catherine stood abruptly and left the room without a word. Preston followed her, shaking his head in disgust. But Richard remained, studying them both with an expression that was difficult to read. "Alina," Richard said finally, "you defended my son with passion and spoke truth that was difficult to hear. I do not approve of how quickly this has happened. I do not understand it. But I can see Julian is happy in a way I have not seen since before the accident. So you have my cautious blessing. Do not make me regret it. I will spend every day proving I am worthy of him," Elena promised. "See that you do," Richard replied. Then, surprisingly, he approached Julian and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are braver than I gave you credit for, son. Your mother will come around eventually. She always does. And if she does not, well, it is your life to live." After Richard left, Julian and Alina sat together in the empty living room, processing what had just happened. Did we really just get engaged in the middle of a family confrontation? Alina asked with a slightly hysterical laugh. "We absolutely did," Julian confirmed. "And I do not regret a single second of it. Though I promise to give you a proper proposal later, with a ring and romance and everything you deserve." "I do not need anything fancy," Alina said, curling against his side. "I just need you." Over the following weeks, their lives transformed. Alina gave notice at the Meridian. And with a proper business loan from Julian's company, with interest rates and a formal contract that she insisted upon, she enrolled in culinary school while beginning plans for her bistro. Julian found new investors who cared more about innovation than social politics. People who appreciated that a CEO with strong personal values was an asset, not a liability. Sophie adored Julian from their first meeting. The young woman with cerebral palsy saw past his wheelchair instantly, engaging him in enthusiastic discussions about her favorite television shows and asking his opinion on everything from music to art. Watching Julian with Sophie, seeing the patience and genuine interest he showed, Alina fell even more deeply in love with him. Julian's relationship with his family improved slowly. Richard began having weekly lunches with Julian and Alina, getting to know her beyond his initial prejudices. He was impressed by her business plan for the bistro, offering advice from his own business experience. Preston remained distant and disapproving, but his opinion mattered less as time went on. Catherine was the holdout. For months, she refused to acknowledge the engagement, would not speak to Alina, and made her disapproval known at every opportunity. But Julian held firm, making it clear that Alina was now a permanent part of his life, and Catherine could either accept it or miss out on his life entirely. 6 months after the proposal, Julian and Alina stood in front of a historic but abandoned building in downtown Chicago. It was 4 stories of beautiful architecture that had been left to decay, with high ceilings, original woodwork, and enormous potential. "What do you think?" Julian asked Alina. "I think it is beautiful and probably way beyond what we can afford," Alina replied practically. "What if I told you I already bought it?" Julian said with a grin. "In both our names, equal ownership." Alina's eyes went wide. "Julian, you did not." "I have a vision. The ground floor becomes Sophie's kitchen, your bistro. But the upper floors become something bigger. A community center focused on helping people with disabilities find employment, develop skills, build careers. We create programs for job training, for advocacy, for connection. We build something that changes lives." Alina stared at the building, then at Julian, tears filling her eyes. "You want to name my bistro after Sophie?" "She is part of why we met," Julian said simply. "She taught you to see people's worth beyond their physical limitations. That lesson brought you into my life. It seems only fitting to honor her." Alina threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Julian murmured against her hair. "Now, there is one more thing." He pulled away from her and, with careful movements, transferred from his wheelchair to kneel on the ground. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. "I promised you a proper proposal," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegant diamond ring. "Alina Carter, you walked into my life on one of my worst days and transformed everything. You saw past my wheelchair to the man underneath. You fought for me when I could not fight for myself. You loved me without conditions or expectations. You made me believe in fairy tales again. Will you marry me? Properly this time, with a ring and romance and all the words I want to say." "Yes," Alina sobbed, laughing through tears. "Yes, of course, yes." Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, and she helped him back into his chair before kissing him deeply. They held each other in front of their building, the place that would become their legacy, their contribution to making the world better. The wedding took place 8 months later in the garden of a small venue overlooking Lake Michigan. It was intimate, only close friends and family. Sophie was Alina's maid of honor, radiant in her joy. Richard walked Alina down the aisle after her own father remained absent. The older man having gradually come to respect and even admire her strength, Catherine attended, sitting stiffly in the front row. But when Julian and Alina exchanged vows, speaking of love, that sees beyond limitations and chooses compassion over judgment, Catherine quietly wiped away tears. After the ceremony, she approached Alina. "You make my son happy," Catherine said simply. "I was wrong to oppose this. I thought I was protecting him, but I was only limiting him. Thank you for seeing what I could not." "Thank you for coming," Alina replied graciously, offering her mother-in-law a olive branch they both knew represented a new beginning. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing. Julian had worked with the venue to ensure everything was accessible, and he danced with Alina, despite his wheelchair. the two of them moving together in perfect harmony, while their loved ones celebrated around them. Sophie gave a toast that left everyone in tears, speaking about how Alina had always been her hero and now Julian was too, because they showed her that love was about seeing people's hearts, not their bodies. 3 years later, Julian and Alina stood in the fully renovated building that had become the heart of their shared mission. The ground floor bistro, Sophie's Kitchen, was thriving. Known throughout Chicago for its innovative menu and warm atmosphere, more importantly, it employed several people with disabilities, offering them fair wages and opportunities they struggled to find. Elsewhere, the upper floors housed the Ashford Carter Foundation, a nonprofit that had helped hundreds of people with disabilities find meaningful employment. They offered job training, resume workshops, interview preparation, and connections with employers who valued ability over appearance. The foundation also ran support groups, advocacy programs, and had become a respected voice in disability rights. Elena's culinary school degree hung on the wall of the bistro. Next to photos of her staff and family, Julian split his time between Ashford Technologies, which had grown successfully without Westbrook's investment, and the foundation work that had become his true passion. Sophie worked part-time at the bistro, greeting customers with her infectious smile. Proving every day that disability did not mean inability, she had become the unofficial mascot of their mission, her joy and determination inspiring everyone who met her. One evening, as they closed the bistro together, Alina found Julian sitting in the empty dining room, looking around with a contented expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sliding into his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. "I am thinking about that night," Julian said. "When Veronica walked out and I sat there feeling worthless, I am thinking about how you appeared like some avenging angel and refused to let me believe I deserved that treatment. I am thinking about how one moment of courage from you changed absolutely everything. I am thinking about how one moment of seeing someone's true worth changed my life too," Alina replied. "You taught me that love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfect for you. Are you happy?" Julian asked, needing to hear the answer. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Alina said honestly. "We built something beautiful, Julian. Not just this place, not just our businesses. We built a life that matters, a life that helps people, a life filled with real love. That is more than most people ever get." Julian kissed her softly. "I love you, Alina Ashford." "I love you too," she whispered back. Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered with possibility. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds held each other close, grateful for every challenge they had overcome, every barrier they had broken, every person who had doubted them and been proven wrong, because they had learned the most important truth of all, that real love sees beyond appearances, beyond social status, beyond physical limitations. Real love sees the heart, values the soul, and chooses connection over convention every single time. And that kind of love, they had proven, could change everything. Thank you for taking Thed time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. The Carter estate blazed with lights that Tuesday evening, every window glowing like a beacon of wealth and excess. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floors, where guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled with champagne flutes in hand. The air hummed with orchestral music and the buzz of high society conversation. Everyone gathered to celebrate the engagement of Vanessa Carter, 2, Thomas Worthington, 3. Heir to a pharmaceutical empire, Jessica Carter stood near the back terrace, Doors wearing a simple navy dress that her mother had dismissed as dull that morning. She held a glass of sparkling water, not champagne, because even that small indulgence felt like asking for too much. At 26, she had learned to make herself small, to occupy as little space as possible in a family that had never wanted her to take up any room at all. Across the ballroom, Vanessa held court like a queen, her diamond ring catching the light with every gesture. She was everything Jessica was not: confident, polished, beloved. Their mother Eleanor stood beside her, one manicured hand resting possessively on Vanessa's shoulder, beaming with pride. Their father Richard worked the room with his usual commanding presence, shaking hands and accepting congratulations as if he himself were getting married. Jessica took a sip of her water and tried to ignore the familiar ache in her chest. She had long ago accepted her role as the forgotten daughter, the one who hadn't quite measured up. While Vanessa had excelled at everything from academics to social graces, Jessica had simply existed in the background, never quite good enough to earn their parents' approval. A waiter passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, and Jessica reached for one, but her mother's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Jessica, really, must you hover near the food like that? People will think we don't feed you." Heat flooded Jessica's face as several nearby guests turned to look. She pulled her hand back, the waiter moving awkwardly away. Eleanor glided over, her smile tight and cold. "Why don't you make yourself useful and check on the coat room? I'm sure someone needs to organize something back there." It was a dismissal, pure and simple. Jessica nodded mutely and turned away, but not before catching the pitying glances from some of the guests. Pity was somehow worse than invisibility. She had just reached the hallway when Vanessa's voice rang out, amplified by the microphone someone had handed her. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Your love and support mean everything to Thomas and me." Vanessa paused, her eyes scanning the crowd with practiced charm. "I especially want to thank my incredible parents who taught me what true success looks like, and who never settled for anything less than excellence." The words were like barbs, each one designed to draw blood. Jessica knew because she had heard variations of this speech her entire life. It was the settling, the less than excellent, the disappointment her parents had learned to ignore. But then Vanessa continued, and Jessica froze in the hallway. "You know, growing up I always knew I wanted to be nothing like my sister. Jessica showed me exactly what not to do with your life. While she drifted through community college and dead-end jobs, I was building my future. So in a way I should thank her too. She was the perfect example of wasted potential." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone, but enough. Enough that Jessica felt her lungs constrict, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. She heard her father's booming laugh, saw her mother's approving nod through the doorway. Something inside her shattered. She didn't remember grabbing her coat, didn't remember pushing through the front doors into the cold November night. One moment she was standing in that hallway, the next she was running down the long driveway, her heels clicking against the pavement, rain beginning to fall in cold, stinging drops. The tears came hot and fast, blurring her vision. Years of swallowed hurt poured out in wrenching sobs that tore from her throat. She ran until her legs ached, until the mansion was far behind her, until she found herself on a deserted street corner in an upscale neighborhood she barely recognized. The rain intensified, soaking through her thin coat, plastering her hair to her face. Jessica collapsed onto a bus stop bench, hugging herself as the cold seeped into her bones. She had no phone, she realized, had left it in her purse back at the house. Had left everything. She was utterly, completely alone. Headlights suddenly illuminated the rain, a sleek black car pulling up to the curb. Jessica tensed, instinct telling her to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out into the downpour. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that the rain immediately began to ruin, but he didn't seem to care. He had dark hair, strong features, and eyes that fixed on Jessica with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Going to catch pneumonia out here," he said, his voice deep and steady. Jessica tried to speak, but only managed a choked sound. The man stepped closer, and she realized she recognized him. Ryan Blackwood. She had seen his face in business magazines, on billboards advertising his luxury hotel chain. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country, and he was standing in the rain, looking at her like she mattered. "I know who you are," he said quietly, pulling off his jacket and draping it around her shoulders. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. "Jessica Carter. I've seen you at these society functions, always on the edges, always overlooked." "How do you?" she whispered. "I pay attention." His eyes never left hers. "I've watched your family treat you like you're invisible for 2 years now, and every time I've wanted to tell you, that you're worth 100 of them. Jessica stared at him, unable to process the words. This had to be a dream, some kind of breakdown-induced hallucination. Ryan crouched down so they were eye level, rain streaming down his face. Come with me. Right now. I have a car, a warm apartment, and a life where you'll never be invisible again. I don't understand, Jessica managed. Why would you? Because I see you, he interrupted, his voice fierce. Because you deserve better than what they've given you. Because from this moment on, you're mine to protect, to care for, to show the world how extraordinary you really are. His hand extended toward her, steady and sure. What do you say, Jessica? Will you let me prove to you what I already know? The rain fell harder, washing away the tears, washing away the past. Jessica looked at his hand, then at his face, seeing something in his eyes she had never seen directed at her before. Absolute certainty. She placed her trembling hand in his. Yes, she whispered. Ryan's fingers closed around hers, warm and protective, and he pulled her to her feet. As he guided her toward the waiting car, Jessica felt something shift inside her chest. Terror and hope tangled together. Forming something new and fragile, she didn't look back at the direction of the car. She only looked forward. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a penthouse that took Jessica's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's skyline, raindrops racing down the glass like diamonds. The interior was modern yet warm, all clean lines and comfortable furnishings in shades of cream and charcoal. It was nothing like the cold, ornate excess of the Carter mansion. This place felt lived in, real. Ryan guided her inside with a gentle hand on her back, and Jessica realized she was still shivering, her clothes dripping onto the hardwood floor. The bathroom is through there, Ryan said, pointing to a hallway. There are towels, robes, everything you need. Take your time. I'll make some tea. Jessica nodded mutely and walked in the direction he indicated, her wet shoes squeaking with each step. The bathroom was spa-like, all marble and soft lighting. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her makeup had run in dark streaks, her hair hung in wet tangles, and her eyes looked haunted. She stripped off the soaked clothing and stepped into the shower, letting hot water cascade over her until feeling returned to her numb limbs. The tears came again, quieter this time, mixing with the water and disappearing down the drain. She cried for the little girl who had tried so hard to earn love that would never come. She cried for all the years wasted hoping her family would see her. And finally, she cried in relief that maybe, just maybe, those years were over. When she emerged wrapped in a plush robe, her hair turbaned in a towel, Ryan was in the kitchen. He had changed into dark jeans and a fitted sweater, looking more human and somehow more intimidating without the formal suit. He poured steaming liquid into 2 mugs and gestured for her to sit on the oversized couch. Jessica curled into the corner, accepting the mug gratefully. The tea was chamomile with honey, soothing and sweet. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Ryan settled into the chair across from her, his gaze steady and unwavering. I told you, I've been watching you. Not in a creepy way, he added with a slight smile. But I attend a lot of the same events as your family. Charity galas, business dinners, society functions, and I've seen how they treat you. Jessica looked down at her tea, shame heating her cheeks. So you pity me? No. His voice was firm enough that her eyes snapped up to meet his. I admire you. Do you have any idea how strong you have to be to endure what you've endured and still show up? Still try? Most people would have broken or become bitter. But you just kept going. I don't feel strong, Jessica whispered. I feel like a coward who should have left years ago. Ryan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Can I tell you something? 6 months ago, I was at the Metropolitan Art Gala. Your mother was holding court, talking about Vanessa's latest achievement. You were standing near a sculpture, completely absorbed in reading the placard. Some man bumped into you hard enough that you dropped your glass. It shattered everywhere. And you know what you did? Jessica shook her head, not remembering the incident at all. You apologized to him? Then you got down on your knees in your evening gown and started picking up the glass pieces yourself so no one else would get hurt. The staff tried to stop you, but you insisted on helping clean up. That's when I knew. Knew what? That you were special. That underneath all that conditioning your family subjected you to, there was someone extraordinary waiting to emerge. Ryan's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. I started paying more attention after that. I watched how you lit up when you thought no one was looking. How you were kind to staff members when your family was dismissive. How you had this quiet grace that had nothing to do with breeding or money. Jessica felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that had been sealed shut for so long she had forgotten it existed. Hope. I don't know how to be extraordinary, she admitted. I don't even know who I am outside of being the disappointment. Then let's find out together. Ryan stood and extended his hand again, just as he had in the rain. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. But I promise you, Jessica, you will never be treated as less than again. Not while I'm around. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. They stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Why does this feel like a fairy tale? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because maybe it is, he replied. But the best kind? The kind where the princess saves herself, and the prince just provides the transportation. Despite everything, Jessica laughed. It was a small, broken sound, but it was real. Ryan's answering smile transformed his face from handsome to devastating. There it is, he said softly. I was wondering what your real laugh sounded like. Morning arrived with pale sunlight streaming through the windows. Jessica woke in a guest bedroom so comfortable she had slept dreamlessly for the first time in months. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the previous night came rushing back. She had left. Actually left. And Ryan Blackwood, billionaire hotel magnate, had taken her in like she mattered. Panic seized her chest. What was she doing? She had no phone, no clothes, no plan. The Carter family would be furious. They would come looking for her. Not out of love, but because she had embarrassed them by disappearing. Jessica threw back the covers and padded into the main living area, where she found Ryan on his laptop at the dining table, phone pressed to his ear. He was already dressed in another impeccable suit, clearly ready for a business day, but he smiled when he saw her and held up one finger. I don't care what the board thinks, Mitchell. Make it happen. I'll be in the office by 10. He ended the call and set the phone down. Good morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in years, Jessica admitted, tightening the robe around herself. But Ryan, I need to think about what happens next. I can't just hide here. You're not hiding. You're regrouping. He stood and moved to the kitchen, pulling out ingredients. And while you regroup, I have a proposition for you. Jessica's stomach dropped. Here it was. The catch. The real reason he had helped her. What kind of proposition? Ryan cracked eggs into a bowl, his movements efficient. I'm opening a new luxury resort in Colorado next month. I need someone to manage the guest experience program. Someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked and can ensure that never happens to our guests. Someone with grace under pressure and genuine empathy. He looked up at her, his expression serious. I think that someone is you. Jessica gaped at him. You want to give me a job? I have a degree in English literature from community college, and I've worked as a bookstore clerk and a museum docent. I have no qualifications for luxury hospitality. You have exactly the qualifications that matter. The rest you can learn. Ryan poured the eggs into a heated pan. I'm not offering this out of charity, Jessica. I'm offering it because I think you'll be brilliant at it. But it's your choice. You can take the job, build something of your own, or you can walk out that door right now. Either way, you're free. Free. The word echoed in her mind like a bell. When was the last time she had been free? And if I fail? She asked quietly. Then you fail, and you try something else. That's how life works when you're not being crushed under impossible expectations. Ryan plated the scrambled eggs along with toast and fresh fruit, setting everything on the table. But I don't think you're going to fail. Jessica sat down slowly, staring at the food. At this man who had appeared in her life like a storm and turned everything upside down. Why do you believe in me when no one else ever has? Ryan sat across from her, his gaze soft but intense. "Because I see you, Jessica. The real you. And she's magnificent." Tears pricked her eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain, but of possibility. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll do it." Ryan's smile could have powered the entire city. 3 days later, Jessica stood in Ryan's corporate office, wearing a borrowed outfit from his assistant, facing a laptop screen showing news coverage of the Carter family. Local socialite Jessica Carter has been reported missing following her sister's engagement party. The news anchor announced, "The family is asking anyone with information to come forward." Jessica's phone, which Ryan had retrieved from the Carter mansion through a lawyer, buzzed constantly with messages. From her mother demanding she stop this childish behavior, from her father threatening to cut her off financially, not that she had ever been on, from Vanessa calling her selfish and dramatic, nothing had changed. They still saw her as a problem to manage, not a person to worry about. "You don't have to respond," Ryan said from beside her. "Not until you're ready." Jessica looked at him, this man who had given her shelter, opportunity, and something she had never expected to find: respect. Over the past 3 days, she had seen him in action, running his empire with sharp intelligence and surprising compassion. He was demanding but fair, powerful but kind. And the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only person in the room. "I'm ready," she said. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to her family. The message was short and clear. She was safe, she was leaving, and she would not be returning. She did not owe them explanations or apologies. She was simply done. When she hit send, the weight that had pressed on her chest for 26 years lifted. Ryan's hand found hers on the desk, his fingers intertwining with hers. "How do you feel?" Jessica turned to look at him, really look at him, and realized that somewhere in the past few days, her feelings had shifted into something deeper, more dangerous, more real. "Terrified," she admitted, "and alive. So incredibly alive." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm. "Good. That's exactly where you should be." Their eyes met and held, the air between them charged with possibility and promise. Jessica felt her breath catch as Ryan leaned closer, his intention clear in his darkening gaze. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, "and I will." But Jessica had spent her entire life stopping herself, holding back, making herself smaller. Not anymore. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. 2. Transformed Jessica Carter's world beyond recognition. The Colorado resort opened to rave reviews, with particular praise for the personalized guest experience program that Jessica had developed. She had thrown herself into the work with a passion she never knew she possessed. Discovering that she had an intuitive understanding of what made people feel valued and seen, Ryan had been right. She was brilliant at it. But more than the professional success, it was the personal transformation that left her breathless. Each morning, she woke up in the small apartment Ryan had helped her lease near the resort. And she chose her own clothes, made her own decisions, lived her own life. No one told her she wasn't good enough. No one compared her to her sister. No one made her feel invisible. And through it all, Ryan was there. Not hovering or controlling, but supporting. He visited the resort twice a week, always making time to have dinner with Jessica, to hear about her challenges and victories, to make her laugh with stories from his own corporate battles. Their relationship had deepened from that first kiss into something neither of them had anticipated. Real, profound love. Jessica was in her office reviewing guest feedback surveys when her assistant knocked tentatively. "Ms. Carter, there are some people here to see you. They say they're your family." Jessica's pen froze mid-notation. She had successfully avoided direct contact with the Carters for 2 months, responding only to legal communications through Ryan's attorney. What were they doing here? "Show them to the conference room," Jessica said, proud that her voice remained steady. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." She took those 5 minutes to breathe, to center herself, to remember that she was not the same woman who had fled into the rain. Then she walked into the conference room with her head high. Eleanor. Richard and Vanessa sat around the polished table, looking out of place in their Manhattan designer clothing against the rustic Colorado luxury. Her mother's face was tight with barely concealed anger, her father's expression calculating. Vanessa looked uncomfortable, which was perhaps the most surprising thing. "Jessica," Eleanor began, her tone falsely warm. "Finally, we've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I received your messages," Jessica replied calmly, remaining standing. I chose not to respond. "What are you doing here?" Richard leaned back in his chair, attempting his usual domineering posture. "We're here because this nonsense has gone on long enough. You've made your point, embarrassed us sufficiently. It's time to come home." "I am home," Jessica said simply. "This is where I live and work now." "Work." Eleanor's laugh was sharp. "Playing hotel manager for your billionaire boyfriend is not a career, Jessica. It's a phase. And frankly, we need you back for the Worthington merger." Jessica felt a cold understanding settle over her. "What does the Worthington merger have to do with me?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, looking at her parents, then at Jessica. "Thomas's family is very traditional. They're concerned about family unity. They've made it clear that they expect all family members to be present and supportive for the wedding and subsequent business dealings." "So you need me to play the happy daughter for appearances?" Jessica said flatly. "To pretend we're a loving family, so your merger goes through smoothly?" "It's a family obligation," Richard said firmly. "We've supported you your entire life, and now we're asking for something in return." The audacity of that statement nearly made Jessica laugh. They had never supported her, never valued her, never seen her as anything but a disappointment. And now they wanted her to prop up their business deal? "No," she said. The single word seemed to echo in the silence that followed. "Excuse me?" Eleanor's voice dripped ice. "No," Jessica repeated, stronger this time. "I won't come back. I won't pretend we're something we're not. You humiliated me my entire life, treated me as less than, and the only time I matter to you is when you need something. So my answer is no." Richard stood abruptly, his face reddening. "You ungrateful little, I think you should leave." The new voice came from the doorway. Ryan stood there in a charcoal suit, his presence commanding and protective. He walked into the room and stood beside Jessica, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture of solidarity. "Mr. Blackwood," Richard tried to regain his composure. "This is a family matter." "Jessica is family to me," Ryan said coolly, "and I won't stand here and watch you bully her. She's given you her answer. I suggest you respect it." Eleanor stood as well, her eyes flashing between Jessica and Ryan. "This is about him, isn't it? He's poisoned you against us, filled your head with ideas." "No," Jessica said, her voice ringing clear. "He opened my eyes to what I deserved. He showed me that I was worth more than scraps of attention and conditional love. But I'm the one who chose to leave. I'm the one who built this new life. And I'm the one telling you now that I'm done." She took a deep breath, feeling Ryan's steady presence beside her, and continued, "I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. Because you're so focused on image and status that you never learned how to actually love someone? Vanessa, I hope you find happiness with Thomas, truly. But I won't be at your wedding. Mom, Dad, I wish you well, but I won't be coming back to New York." Vanessa stood slowly, her eyes glistening. "Jess, I'm sorry. For what I said at the party? For all of it. I was terrible to you." Jessica felt her anger soften slightly at the genuine regret in her sister's voice. "I appreciate that, but an apology doesn't undo 26 years. Maybe someday we can rebuild something, but not now. Not like this." Eleanor grabbed her purse with sharp, angry movements. "You're making a huge mistake. When this little romance falls apart and your job disappears, don't come crawling back to us." "I won't," Jessica promised. "Because even if everything fell apart tomorrow, I would still have something you never gave me: belief in myself." Richard moved toward the door, his expression hard. "You're no longer a Carter as far as we're concerned." "Good," Jessica said, and meant it. "I never really was, anyway." The three of them filed out, Eleanor and Richard, radiating fury. Vanessa, pausing at the door to look back once with something like regret before following. When they were gone, Jessica's legs suddenly felt weak. Ryan caught her, guiding her into a chair and kneeling beside her. You were amazing, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm shaking, Jessica admitted with a shaky laugh, because you just did something incredibly brave. Ryan took both her hands in his. Jessica, I need to tell you something. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of scaring you away. Jessica's heart stuttered. What is it? I'm in love with you. The words were simple, direct, and utterly sincere. I think I started falling for you that night in the rain, watching you be so vulnerable and so strong all at once. And every day since, I've fallen deeper. I love your kindness, your resilience, your brilliant mind. I love the way you notice small details and the way you light up when you talk about guest experiences. I love you, Jessica. All of you. Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks, but these were tears of joy so pure it almost hurt. I love you too. God, Ryan, I love you so much it terrifies me. He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Don't be terrified. Be excited. Because I'm going to spend every day proving to you how extraordinary you are. Jessica looked up at him, this man who had saved her by showing her how to save herself. Promise me something? Anything. Promise me you'll never stop seeing me. The real me. Ryan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense and full of promise. Jessica Carter, I will never stop seeing you. You are the most visible, vibrant, incredible woman I have ever known. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that. He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise. Jessica melted into him, letting herself feel everything she had suppressed for so long: desire, hope, love, joy. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling wider than she ever had before. So what happens now? She asked. Ryan grinned, that devastating smile that made her heart race. Now we live. We build. We love. We create something beautiful together. Your family tried to make you small, but Jessica, you were always meant to shine. Jessica looked out the conference room window at the snow-capped mountains beyond. At the resort she had helped bring to life, at the world of possibility stretching before her. She thought about the girl who had fled into the rain, broken and defeated, and the woman standing here now, whole and fierce and free. I'm ready, she said. Turning back to Ryan, I'm ready to shine. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers. Then let's light up the whole damn sky. 6 months later, Jessica stood in a different conference room in the same resort, presenting her guest experience program expansion to a room full of hospitality executives. Her own company, not Ryan's, though he sat in the back row watching with obvious pride. She had taken the skills she developed and launched her own consulting firm, helping luxury properties worldwide create more personalized, empathetic guest experiences. The presentation ended to enthusiastic applause. As the executives filed out, already talking about contracts and partnerships, Ryan made his way to the front. You were magnificent, he said, pulling her into his arms. I had a good teacher, Jessica replied, kissing him softly. You had natural talent. I just gave you the space to discover it. Ryan pulled back slightly, his expression suddenly nervous in a way she had never seen before. Actually, speaking of space, I was hoping you might be willing to share some of yours. Jessica tilted her head, confused. What do you mean? Ryan took a deep breath and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, dropping to one knee right there in the empty conference room. Jessica's hands flew to her mouth, her heart threatening to beat right out of her chest. Jessica Carter, you transformed my life the moment you took my hand in the rain. You showed me what real strength looks like, what true grace means. I don't just love you, I admire you. I respect you. I am in awe of you every single day. Will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner in this extraordinary life you're building? Through tears of absolute joy, Jessica pulled him to his feet. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and stunning, just like everything else he had given her. They kissed as the Colorado sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jessica had been humiliated by her family, had run into the rain in tears. But that night had not been an ending. It had been a beginning. The beginning of discovering who she really was. The beginning of understanding her own worth. The beginning of a love that saw her, truly saw her. For the first time in her life, she had been told she would never shine, that she would always be a shadow. They had been wrong. Jessica Carter blazed like the sun, and nothing would ever dim her light again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.